Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your attendance to this Council Cabinet meeting on Wednesday, the 7th of December 2022, here in the Council Chamber at Derby. So, apologies, I think we have one or two, Karen.
We do. Councillors Williams, Shanker and Skelton, the Deputy Youth Mayor, the Youth Mayor, Andy Smith and Simon Riley.
Thank you, Mick.
Yes, Chair, while we're on the subject, Councillor Webb is chairing another meeting at this moment in time and will be joining us later.
Okay, thank you. So, moving on to late items. There are two. Are they items 16 and 17? Just 17, is it? Okay. So we'll deal with that in the confidential items at item 17. So there are no petitions, I don't believe, and I don't think there are any urgent items to which call-in will not apply. Any declarations of interest? None. Minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of November. Any alterations? All happy? Moved, seconded. Thank you. Okay, moving on then. Recommendations from Executive Scrutiny Board, which was held last night. We do have a paper from them, but if that's okay, we'll do it as usual and deal with each recommendation or otherwise on the items to which we are dealing with in the course of the meeting. That means we can move on to item 8, and that is the approval of the Council Tax Support Scheme for 23-24. Yes, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the approval of the Council Tax Support Scheme for next financial year for 2023-24, and the CTS scheme, it was introduced on the 1st of April 2013, which replaces the National Council Tax Benefit Scheme. And the Council Tax Support Scheme assists working age claimants who require assistance with paying with their council tax bills. It's a statutory requirement for local authorities to have a CTS scheme to assist those working age claimants who need help with their council tax due to financial need. And it's a statutory requirement for billing authorities to set out and agree their local council tax schemes for the following year by the 11th of March. And this is what this report is here to do tonight. The proposals of the scheme remain unchanged, as with previous financial years. The main elements of the scheme is that it's a means-tested scheme, discounted, calculated scheme, and it applies to a maximum eligible amount of council tax, which will be capped at a yearly rate of a Band A property charge, and the minimum contribution that all council tax claimants have to pay towards their council tax is 30%. So those critical elements within the CTS remain unchanged from the current financial year into next financial year. So the recommendations of the report is to approve the council CTS scheme as detailed in the report, which takes effect from the 1st of April 2023.
Okay, so a fairly standard report. Exec Scrutiny looked at this last night and resolved to note the report. Councillor Smith, anything to add?
No, Chair, just to add this, obviously this is a yearly report and the CTS scheme is unchanged from the previous year, so I'll just move to recommendations, please. Thank you.
Thank you. A scheme that can be potentially very useful this year in this time of cost of living crisis. So we have unless there's any other comments, questions. No. In that case, we have recommendation 2.1. Can that be approved? Thank you very much. Okay, then moving on to item 9, which is consultation, the launch of a consultation on the future viability of Ashgate Nursery School. I suspect Gamel's going to present this one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, Chair, the report outlines the start of the process, a proposal to consult on the future viability of Ashgate Nursery School. The report sets out a number of factors where pupil numbers have been falling for a number of reasons. Some of them are the pandemic related and places being taken up by parents, working parents for wraparound care, general decline in primary numbers and birth data has impacted on the two schools. And then in addition to that, Central Nursery School 3 or 4 years ago were funded differently in relation to SEND, and in order to get consistency across all our nursery schools, there were some changes within that area as well. So there's been a number of factors resulting in falling pupil numbers across the two schools. The council has been working very closely with the governing body over the last 6-7 months to come up with a viable solution. The added complicating factor is that there is a significant financial deficit across both of the nursery schools. Ashgate Nursery School's predicted deficit at the end of the year is 134,000. Central Nursery's deficit is forecast at 311,000 at the end of the year, and a combined deficit of 446,000. The Chair, the report recommends starting the consultation process and approving the document attached to Appendix 1, and the initial consultation period will run from 9th of January to 27th of February, and the outcome reported to Council Cabinet for consideration. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Just to remind folks, this is about agreeing the consultation. It's not about the actual outcome. It's about agreeing the consultation and the circumstances as described. Exec Scrutiny looked at this last night and did make a couple of minor recommendations, which I believe the Councillor Williams has seen and agreed can be incorporated into the consultation.
That's right, Chair. Those will be incorporated into the consultation document before it launches.
Okay. Martin, anything to add?
Yes, Chair. I think it's basically that particular recommendation was a tidy-up recommendation from one executive member, but there were 1 or 2 members who do have concerns about these proposals, and I think needed a lot of convincing that these proposals were the right way forward. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Well, as I said at the beginning, let's remember that this isn't about taking the decision tonight. It's about going into consultation. Let's see what that consultation comes up, and we can enter then the debate. Councillor Williams is not here. Yes, Nadine, I presume you're here in Councillor Shanker's place, yeah? Yes.
There we go. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I am here in Councillor Shanker's place this month. It's a shame that Councillor Williams isn't here, really, because I would have liked to have asked her a couple of questions about this, including whether she has spoken to the nursery as yet about this issue, because I've approached the head and I've asked her for comments, and I'd like to be able to share those comments with you this afternoon.
You have every opportunity to share those comments in the consultation. And as I've said to your colleague, and in advance, we're not here to debate the ins and outs, the rights and wrongs. We're here to launch a consultation to which you're more than entitled to contribute.
And the head will indeed, as will the teachers and the parents will be contributing as well. But I just need to be able to express on her behalf today, before you decide on the consultation process,
I'm sorry,
the fact
Nadine.
that the key
sorry,
word
no,
that she used.
I'm sorry.
Councillor
Nadine,
Poulter,
you
please
do
allow
not
me to
need
speak.
to
Come on, this is the first issue of the day.
You do not need to express that.
I will tell you that her first word was heartbreaking.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on.
And I will also tell you that there is a great, grave fear that there will be children that will fall through the cracks if this goes ahead.
Cabinet to this cabinet meeting? No? In that case, we have recommendations 2.1 through 2.3. Can they be agreed? Yeah, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 10 then. Oh, actually, I've got a request that we deal with item 14 next, or an item within item 14 from yourself, Gamal.
Thank you, Chair.
If you'll
This-
indulge me on that, we'll be able to free Gamal up once we've done this.
Very kind of you, Chair. Thank you very much. If I can pick this, this is a short item. So item 14 is in the report, Compliance and Contract Finance and Procedures. This report relates to the Council's Children's Accommodation Strategy for Looked After Children. The Council has completed a procurement process to appoint a provider to work in partnership with the Council, and this report seeks approval to consider allocating £60,000 off the 1 million already committed to the Children's Homes Capital Programme to start the refurbishment of one small children's home alongside the provider proceeding with Ofsted registration, and those discussions are continuing, and this report in readiness to mobilise and place the young person by March seeks approval in terms of awarding capital funding for the provider to proceed with necessary work subject to final checks and balances. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Gamal. Execs currently looked at this last night and resolved to note the report. Are there any other comments, questions, please, in relation to this item? In that case, we have recommendations 2.1 to 2.3. Thank you. Can they be agreed? Thank you. Moving on then. Thank you, Gamal. We'll go back then to item 10, which is the update on tenancy strategy. Yes, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. This report had a very good discussion last night at executive scrutiny. There were no recommendations. The context of this is to look at the supply and demand issues we face in the city around affordable homes in general, but also in particular around those that are larger homes, 4 beds and bigger, and those that have been adapted for people with disabilities. And just the recognition of the need to use all the tools in our armoury to try and address some of those issues and the rising need in the city. So the report proposes to amend, as a minor amendment, to the existing tenancy strategy to include the use of flexible tenancies for those council homes that are 4-bedded or bigger, or those that have been significantly adapted for disabled people. So in those conditions, a flexible tenancy would be offered to residents taking those properties, and that would enable the council to potentially have those stock numbers back into the stock to be used for other people in the longer term. It would not affect anyone existing in a council tenancy of a property of that size or to be adapted. It's for new tenancies. And the report details the level of demand and pressures we're seeing around the supply and demand of these properties. We have 183 properties that are 4-bedded or bigger in the council's stock, and of those, 13 were available for reletting over the last 18 months. And we have 304 households on the register already who have a need for houses of that size. And we have 1,302 people on the register who are needing for adapted homes. So it is really about how we can make the best use of our properties to meet some of that really increased need. There's a range of initiatives that we use within the council to maximise the level of properties we can allocate for people who need the larger homes or those adapted. We have a really positive incentive scheme to encourage people moving from those properties and making it in their interest to do so, very supportive. In our home lease scheme, we look at providing new build opportunities for houses of this size when we get opportunities to do that through our development partners, and also purchasing some larger homes from the private sector to add to the stock, and also looking at those larger homes and working with our registered providers across the city. This really is another tool to add to those tools to try and increase the stock of those houses of that size. We've carried out some consultation through our Let's Talk consultation tool. 80% plus were in favour of this minor change to the tenancy strategy. To be really clear, the change would be for give people 5-year flexible tenancies. And at the end of that 5 years, there's a range of information which is in the report about the support that will be given to those residents to look at whether that would continue, if it still had a need for that property, for that adaptation, or for the size of the property, and offer a suitable alternative accommodation, advice and transparent process around appeals, and a really supportive environment around the end of that flexible tenancy. So hopefully that's generally quite a straightforward report, a minor change to the strategy to enable us to have more access to those properties that are in desperate need across the city. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. A minor change, but an important one in relation to our ability to provide the right level of housing. Exec scrutiny looked at this last night and resolved to note the report. Councillor Webb, your report, did you want to add anything to it?
Thank you, Chair. Nice to see the responses and particularly the number or the percentage that are in favour of moving towards flexible tenancies in this type of accommodation, be that 4-bedroom or over properties or substantially adapted properties. So I welcome the support that's been given to it. It is something that we need to do when we've got people waiting up to 4 years on waiting lists for these properties, where we know that some types of these properties are under occupied. As the director has said, we do offer all sorts of incentives to ask people to leave under occupied properties that attempt trying to free up these properties has been unsuccessful in many cases, although there has been some take-up of the incentives. So I would recommend that we do this and emphasise again that it's for new tenancies, not existing tenancies.
Thank you. Important to note that it is only for new tenants to be able to invoke this. Any comments from Cabinet before I go to Councillor Peatfield? Councillor Peatfield.
Thank you, Chair. I think for you to say, Chair, that this is a minor change is quite something. Changing from lifetime security to flexible tenancy and the insecurity that may bring for people is hardly minor. I note at 4.2, it says the availability of these homes has been increasingly scarce due in part, and I think in part is a very important 2 words in that point. Ultimately, this is a symptom of national policy, isn't it? This lack of homes. Only this morning in The Guardian, 30,000 shortage.
We're not here to deal with national policy.
30,000 shortage in affordable homes.
I know your comments around it being
Yes.
not being a significant thing. Take your point. Councillor Grace.
No, I haven't finished, Councillor Poulter. I have questions.
Councillor Peatfield, if you're going to stray on to national politics, you've finished.
I have questions
Councillor
about
Graves.
the paper, Councillor Poulter. If you would
Councillor
allow me
Graves.
to ask those questions, that's what I'm here for.
It's a cabinet meeting, Councillor Peatfield.
And I have the
Councillor
right to
Graves.
ask these questions, Councillor Poulter. There are questions about
Councillor
the
Peatfield,
consultation
you have the
responses.
right to address the cabinet meeting when I give you permission to do so. You've finished.
Then
Because
I
you
haven't finished.
You strayed into national politics, so you've finished. Councillor Graves.
My God.
Thank you. I think that, I mean, this is obviously trying to reflect the difficulties of the shortage of housing in Derby, particularly for those of the lower income people. However, I would like to put out a call for part of the strategy should include protection of our elder and older residents. It seems more and more that in those complexes where it's designed for elderly people, that we are getting not just younger people, but people with difficult backgrounds, so antisocial behaviour, for instance. I mean, I asked a question at the last full council about why we're putting in people that are disturbing the older residents. In a complex, you only need one bad tenant to affect the rest of the complex. At the end of the day, these are older tenants, and what we should be doing is protecting them in the twilight of their years.
Thank you. I take your point. Older tenants are protected because this, just remind you that this refers to new tenants. And the categories of housing we're talking about here are where they are specially adapted properties or larger families, etc. Isn't it, Roy? Is there anything you wanted to add in response to that?
Just to say that Councillor Graves had an explanation at the last council meeting to the question, and the particular incident that he was mentioning has been addressed. There is work that we do through Derby Homes with regard to tenants that cause disruption, and so therefore we address those tenants in that way. With regard to the adaptations and larger properties, we have a serious waiting list, and as I say, it's new tenants that we are looking to introduce this service to. So existing and older tenants would not be affected by this change of policy.
I think you're right. I think it's a different type of housing, isn't it? So, yeah, we'll go from there. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Peatfield, do you want another go?
Yes, I really would. Thank you, Councillor
What would you
Poulter.
like to ask? Is it in relation to
Yes.
if it's in relation to anything Councillor Graves has said, or Councillor Webb, that's fine. If you're intending to go
Yes,
back to...
following on from Councillor Graves' comment about securing elderly people, that's my main concern in this paper, actually, that there doesn't seem to be any built-in security to support those who would be transferring if after the 5-year period. It's an important point to raise, Councillor Poulter, because while it's okay for you and for officers to say we will make sure that they're okay, the reality is that the house being available in the right geographical location, in a place where they are still close to family or support that they need, or their right to refuse, none of that is built into this paper. So I really wanted to raise that concern here at this meeting and flag that. You know, our tenants, these are, a house is not a commodity. It becomes a home when somebody moves into it. And we must...
Point made, but I would refer you back to the fact that it's new tenants. Councillor Webb's given you the answer, but I think you know that Derby Homes in particular do not just throw people out of their own homes without finding them agreed suitable accommodation, and that practice will continue. Is that fair enough, Councillor Webb?
Yeah, 4.9. If you look at the last bullet point on the report, it says that an offer of suitable alternative accommodation will be made when the decision not to grant a new flexible tenancy is because the household no longer has the need for that property.
So it is addressed in the report.
Yeah, there will be alternatives that will be offered.
Okay. So in that case, then we have recommendation 2.1. Can that be agreed? Okay, thank you. Moving on then to item 11, special education needs and disability. Living my best life. Capital. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So this paper is to make various recommendations about the expansion of specialist school places in Derby. We are continuously expanding the number of places available to children locally, and this is part of the, I suppose, the capital programme pipeline. So firstly, we wish to improve St Clair's School and expand it by 35 places, as outlined in paragraph 1.3. And we'd like to delegate authority to the Strategic Director to People to award the grant of up to 6.187 million to the Esteemed Multi-Academy Trust that runs St Clair's School, which is a special secondary school. This will also improve the secondary provision in terms of the curriculum offer. So, you know, it's about the environment, but also the actual quality of learning and outcomes provided. The other element of this is to agree additional SEND capital programmes, which we are developing in conjunction with our special schools to provide special school classes in mainstream schools. So that, for example, you would have Murray Park might have St Martin's at Murray Park. So those young people would be taught by the special school teachers, but actually have a classroom in the mainstream building and be able to mix and socialise with lots of other children they might not normally come into contact with. Importantly for all of the expansion of places is that young people in Derby remain in Derby, that they stay close to their families, communities and friends, and that we avoid very expensive out-of-area provision, quite often in independent places at a very high cost, and also that the transport costs sometimes associated with that are also vastly reduced in keeping them in Derby. So again, we are asking 2.4 to delegate authority to agree those additional SEND capital projects to the Director of People Services, Director of Resources, with the Cabinet member of up to 0.25 million for those inclusion hubs as well. Happy to take any.
Thank you very much. So in summary, a very much welcomed extra provision for SEND pupils within the city, mutually convenient to the parents, child and the council as well. So much welcome from our point of view. Executive scrutiny looked at this last night and resolved to note the report. Cabinet, any further comments, questions, conditions? Councillor Peatfield.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree and concur with you. It is very much welcomed investment into SEND places in schools. But I would just like to ask about the SEND investment in nurseries, such as Ashgate Nursery and Central Nursery. Obviously, those pupils eventually do go up to the school places, and there is a grave fear that those pupils won't actually be properly accommodated at the nursery level.
I'm sure we'll get lots of representation about nursery provision in the course of the consultation regarding Ashgate. So, Cabinet, any other things to mention? No? In that case, we've got recommendations 2.1, 2.4. Can they be agreed? Thank you. Moving on then to item 12. The medium-term financial strategy, just to for the benefit of Cabinet as well. This is about the strategy for this year's budget, not to debate any potential or speculate about savings or any measures that might come into the budget. We set the scene in relation to the upcoming budget and the pressures on the budget. This is to explain the approach towards the medium-term financial plan and the current budget pressures. So discussion tonight will be limited to that strategy. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, as you've rightly pointed out there, this is one of two reports that's come into Council Cabinet in December. The first one here tonight is setting the context of the financial frameworks that we're operating in, and the second one later in December, following the local government finance settlement, we'll be putting our proposals forward to Cabinet in response to that. So the purpose of the medium-term financial strategy is to provide all of the stakeholders on the planned revenue and capital expenditure and its financing over the next 3 years, and it sets the context really for the budget proposals that we're planning for. Nationally, the context for local authority funding is strained, and that's due to a number of reasons. We know that we have got rising inflation rates, interest rates and demands on councils' budgets post-pandemic and through the current cost of living crisis. That's all having an impact on local government finances. The details of the report at 4.1.5 summarises the response to the national response in the autumn settlement that was announced on the 17th of November, which introduced additional funding for social care and a delay into some of the charging reforms. And there's a summary in the report around some of those outcomes of that autumn statement of the 17th of November. Some positive aspects of those proposals in the autumn statement, in so much that additional social care funding was announced, and that was new money within the local government system of £1 billion, which was announced in 23-24, and then a further 1.7 billion in 24-25. And there was also reforms around delaying of the adult social care reforms, and that was in essence to allow the funding that had been earmarked for those to be able to put into local government to support those pressures that were already in the system. Another key aspect of the autumn statement was around council tax thresholds, and it allowed the increase from 1.99% to 2.99% for the core council tax, and an increase in the adult social care precept by a further 1% to 2% from 2023-24. So whilst the autumn statement did provide a mix of grant and council tax flexibility relating to the social care, there was no new funding for the myriad of other pressures that we're facing local government in terms of increased demands and inflation. That has led to a movement from the position that we were in February, when Council approved the balanced budget for 2022-23, where we were reporting a gap over 2 years of 15.1 million, but due to the current economic climate, that gap is increased with a forecast materially to an estimated circa 48 million by 25-26. As I said earlier in the report, this is not new to, this isn't just for Derby alone. The whole local government system is facing challenges of this nature. The medium-term financial strategy talks about the reserve strategy, the capital strategy, the savings strategy, and our treasury management strategy. And in terms of the reserve strategy, a key point to point out there is the projected overspend that was reported in the Q2 financial monitoring will have a material impact on the council's resilience going forward. The budget approach for next year really works on a number of proposals. They're around service prioritisations linked to outcomes in the council plan, but also a review of services and our ability to deliver those services. And the context of the report shows you that from our February reported position, we've had a movement of £22.6 million in terms of pressures that are being faced by the council in 23-24. Apologies for the blurriness of the report. It doesn't seem to have transpired in the PDF format at 4.4.1, but there's a summary there in terms of a graphical picture of some of the pressures that we're facing. So if I just give some context to some of the headlines there, just to help colleagues with the fact that it doesn't read very well on the paper. The pressures that we've got are relating to adult social care, 3 million, children's social care, 6 million, home to school transport, 4.5 million, and inflation rate and pay awards amounting to around 6 million. So that takes the increased gap up to the amounts that we're proposing, that we're reporting in the report. As I said earlier, there's be a final report on the 21st of December that will be our response to bridging that financial challenge that we've got ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison, and on behalf of the Cabinet, thank you for you and your team's efforts in relation to this. We know, because we've been using this strategy to go through the pressures and the plan, and what we will be presenting ready for the 21st of December. We know how much work's gone into it, and again, thank you for you and your team for that. Now, last night Exec Scrutiny looked at this and made a recommendation. In summary, Councillor Repton, the recommendation, the right to government, expressing concern around the council's position, etc. You may or may not know that Councillor Shanker and I and Councillor Smale met with Simon Riley and Alison to discuss the strategy effectively and the pressures and etc. And we agreed then at that meeting to draw up a letter to send on a joint basis between him and myself to government expressing exactly those concerns. So we can agree to your exec scrutiny's recommendation because we are determined to highlight the pressure that the council is under to government, and we will do that in due course as soon as the letter's been drawn up.
If I can say, that is reassuring up to a point, Chair, but I'm sure you'd agree when recently a senior civil servant referred to Derby as a line on a spreadsheet. We're more than that. We're a city with 250,000 people who have needs, and needs that have to be met. And if we, and like many councils, within 2 to 3 years, unless things radically change, this council, like many, will simply fall over and be unable to provide those services that local people want and need. So I think it's important that the public are aware as well, Chair, and I'm sure you'd agree with that, about the scale of the challenges that this council faces, and without help, it just will simply won't be able to meet those challenges. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think thank you for avoiding going into full speech mode there. We did point this out to the public at the last cabinet meeting, and we will continue to highlight the unique position of Derby in some respects. Paul Simpson, the Chief Exec, wants to address this issue, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I guess just to reassure Cabinet and other members of what we're doing in addition to what you've just outlined there. So every opportunity, I'm raising this with civil servants. So just to give an example, there was a meeting last week of chief execs from across the East Midlands with senior civil servants from the department, where myself and other colleagues from across the patch were expressing our concerns to civil servants. I don't know whether the two things are related, but just to let colleagues know that just this afternoon we've been asked to host a ministerial visit next week where the Minister wants to come and talk to us about local government finance. So, you know, I think the message is getting out there that there are concerns, and we will obviously clearly express our concerns to the Minister when we meet. I know Simon is at an event now with other treasurers from unitary councils where I think they've got, no doubt they'll have a civil servant there. They often do, to come and talk it, kind of Chatham House rules, I suppose, but nonetheless, opportunities there to talk to senior civil servants and raise the concerns on behalf of the sector. And I think that's the important point here, is that this has to be a sector-wide response to the challenges facing local government, because these, as Alison quite rightly highlighted in her report, this is not a situation that is unique to Derby. This is a situation that is not of the sector's making. And clearly all of the economic challenges that everybody is well aware of, unfortunately local authorities are not immune from that. So we will continue to express our concerns about the situation, and we will do that at every opportunity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Cabinet, did you want to add into your reports, Councillor Smale? Anything you want to add?
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, obviously, a lot of things have just already been said by Paul as well, but yeah, this is obviously a grave concern to all of us with the situation that we find ourselves in. Just recently in a Segoma meeting, there's also, about 90% of the Segoma unitary authorities have got major concerns about balancing their budgets, ourselves being one of them. I'm very grateful for Councillor Shanker for joining us to, line out the pressures that we're facing, understanding mutually together to try and help get a balanced budget so that we can, push this council forward into some kind of, direction. It's not an easy task, and I think we've well documented for the last 2 months or so, and particularly since from Q2 pressures, that the council is going through a turbulent time. So, I appreciate that, obviously the door's always open with all councillors. We've got the budget to come forward, which the papers will be released soon. So obviously we're going to have some difficult conversations, but one that we'll have to meet as a cabinet, as a challenge head on to deliver a balanced budget for the city. Thank you, Chair.
I just point out we have an open door policy. Any group leader or member of the council wishes to come and speak and talk freely about these things is more than welcome, and will receive the same courtesy. Councillor Peatfield.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions for Councillor Smale. In an interview on Radio Derby last week, Councillor Smale referred to circumstances such as material prices, inflation, COVID, etc. But the first question is, Councillor Smale, do you accept that there is a £750 million funding that was removed from our coffers, basically down to 12 years of austerity, before we even look at the external pressures? That's my first question.
I can answer that for Councillor Smale, if you like, Councillor Peatfield, because it was on the table in discussion with your leader, who accepts that £750 million is not an accurate reflection of what he was talking about. He understands it better now. And no, we don't accept that proposal, that relevance, shall we say. Your second question?
Second question then, please. Every year we, as the Labour Group, have warned about using reserves as budget setting and then again using them to cover overspends. They have been drained dangerously dry. My question is, predicting that you possibly won't be replenishing the reserve coffers as you had planned to, where is our resilience going to come from when the next disaster comes down the line?
Again, I can answer that because that will be up for discussion on the 21st of December. You'll hear what the proposals are in respect to that. After consultation, it will be debated at full council. Your question. In that case, we have recommendation 2.1. Can that be agreed? Thank you. Moving on into item 13, Treasury Management Mid-Year Report is Alison again, I guess.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Treasury Management Mid-Year Report. So the Mid-Year Report outlines the Treasury Management activity for the period the 1st of April to the 30th of September this year. And fundamentally, Treasury Management describes the management of the Council's investments, its cash flows, its banking, the money market and capital market transactions, and I suppose the effective control of the risks associated with those activities. And that's about balancing the optimum of performance consistent with the risks, and that's what this report details. The fluctuations in the money market exposes the Council to financial risks, and therefore successful identification and monitoring of the risk control environment is fundamental to the Treasury Management strategy. The report identifies the current position in terms of where we are in terms of our Treasury Management summary, our Treasury borrowing activity and our investment activity, and also the prudential indicators that are around the governance and the risk assurance of that activity. I suppose the main issues to note in the report is that we are forecasting a balanced position as at the 30th of September 2022. So there's nothing fundamental to note within in the mid-year report. If we look at the prudential indicators, you can see that all of the indicators are on track as part of our prudential code mechanisms, and the compliance report is detailed at 11.1 on the report. A number of the Treasury Management prudential indicators are prescribed under the Council's Treasury Management strategy, and these were approved by full Council on the 16th of February. I need to draw your attention to one of the investment limits that which was breached, and that was in relation to the amount of money held in our current bank account with our provider, which exceeded the limit at a particular time in Q2. But in issue, the report is predicting an on budget with no significant risks associated with the Treasury Management Strategy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Exec Scrutiny resolved to note the report. Councillor Smell, anything to add?
Nothing really for me, Chair, apart from obviously this is obviously a standard procedure report that we have to produce. Obviously then again, which we approve again for the following year at full council. So yeah, this is everything in line that we statutory have to do in relation to our treasury management. Thank you.
Okay, so any other comments, questions? No, in that case then we have recommendations 2.1 to 2.3. Can they be agreed? Agreed. Good. Well, we've dealt with item 14. We'll move on to item 15, in which I have to declare that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, that the press and public be excluded from the meeting during the discussion of the following items on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, and the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Having done that, there was nobody here in the first place, so